Hello everyone, I'm Mariana Sadowski. We are going to make a garment for the moon today. This is going to be the mobile, the final product that we're going to do. Here are the materials that we will need for today's workshop. We need a paper plate. We will need some aluminum foil, white paper. It can be any kind of copy paper or maybe a cardstock. We need a couple of brushes, we need a little bit of rubbing alcohol, some white glue, and then we will need either food coloring, or if you don't have any food coloring, you can find any kind of water-based colors, like watercolors, scissors. We need a white crayon or a white candle, some salt, pencil, and water. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create several magical papers that have patterns and different textures on them so that we can use those for the garment of the moon. We are going to use a crayon, or we can even try a white candle and try to write something with the candle. Maybe you want to write a letter to the moon or something like that. So let's try to write something with our candle onto our paper. And once we have covered the whole piece of paper with some writing. So no one can see really what I wrote, but let's see what happens if I put a little bit of ink over it. So I'm going to put a few drops right on here, and I'm going to put a few colors out so that we have different colors that we can mix together. We are going to take our brush, we're going to dip it in water, and now we're going to dip it in the colors and are going to paint right over it. Can you see what's happening? I can see something revealing. I can see all the writing revealing here with the water, with the food coloring. I can now sprinkle a little bit of salt on top of this, and you will see what the magic that is happening. Don't use too much salt, otherwise it's not going to form all this magic. Just a little bit, just enough to absorb some of the ink. I'm not going to paint right now over the salt. I'm just going to cover my whole piece of paper with different colors. And you can get crazy and creative with this. Always remember that before it dries, to sprinkle a little bit of salt. What I want you to observe is the magic that the salt is doing to the ink. It is absorbing the ink and it is forming all these little crystals. And when it dries, we can get rid of the salt, but all these little crystals will still remain. So we're going to set this aside so that it dries, and then we're going to do another technique. For this, we're going to take another piece of paper, and we are going to use again our food coloring for this, but this time I am going to use some rubbing alcohol. I am going to put just slightly a little bit on this cap. Now, I love to take my crayon first and always start with drawing some patterns. And as you can see, it's really hard to see when you work with a white crayon on white paper. But again, it's going to be revealed as soon as we put the color on. So what you can do is also just take the candle and combine both of them. Let's take again our water and our food colors. I am now going to cover everything again with the food coloring. While it's wet, we are going to take a clean brush and dip it into the alcohol and then just sprinkle it onto the food color. Wherever the alcohol come in contact with the food coloring dries and the alcohol absorbs all the color. And so you will have a fainter color with a darker rim around the circle. I am going to add a few drops. You see what is happening? Let's set this aside so it can dry, and let's move on to the next step. The next step is we are going to now create our moon, and we are going to use a paper plate, but in case you don't have a paper plate, you can also use a cereal box and just cut it in a round shape. I'm going to cut this out. I'm cutting out the center of the plate. We have our circle ready. Now it's time for us to cover it with aluminum foil. This is a large piece of aluminum foil, so I'm going to cut it a little bit down. So now we are going to wrap it in our aluminum foil. We can just go and wrap it on the back. We're just going to go and fold it over. There it is, and I can always adjust a little bit the size of it. I am going to take another plate, and I am going to turn it around and draw this plate. I'm going to trace it right on to my textured and patterned paper. The plate is a little bit larger than this, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to use I'm going to make a half moon. And now I can cut it out. Now the next step is, because we have another paper, now we can do two. So I am going to trace my crescent moon onto the back of this other paper. And I will cut this one out. Here we have both crescent moons, and we have the full moon. We are going to take the full moon and sandwich it between the two crescent moons. What I'm going to use is I'm going to use some glue to glue them all three together. I am just going to go ahead and just put a little bit of glue on both. I'm doing a lot of glue around the edges and a little bit on the center. I'm going to place it right in here. And place this one right against it. Okay, there it is. I am going to tap it down a little bit so that I make sure that they both are glued together. Take these extra pieces of paper and we're going to cut them and maybe cover here the back side of this, and you can cut them into different shapes. I am just going to go ahead, take a little bit more glue and cover this part that I don't want to leave unfinished. I am going to cover with different shapes the back so that I am just going to cover up a little bit more of the aluminum foil to make it prettier in the back. So once you have this ready, now you can go ahead and can add maybe a face to the moon. Does your moon have a face? What shape of eyes do you want to put to that face? What shape of mouth? Is the moon angry? Is it happy? Is it cold? How is your moon? So once you're done with the face of the moon, now you can add either a hat or a scarf or a dress or a skirt or maybe some pants that I made over here with a shirt. rather than taping these on, I'm always using these little pieces of paper because then it all continues having interesting patterns. I don't know, maybe should I add this on? What do you think? Should I make a hat for my yes? Maybe it needs a little hat, right? So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and add a little bit of glue just here to the rim. And here we go. So now that we have our dressed moon ready, if you would like to, you can use a piece of string and tape it onto the back so that you can hang it up like this. Let me show you how we do this. Turn it around, place the string, and again with a little piece of paper, I'm going to use this again as if it was a tape, and I'm going to tape it right on top of this. I am going to put this right on top of my double string so that now it works as a glue and I can hang it. It can move freely in with the wind. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you had as much fun as I did. I hope you've enjoyed this chapter of the Getty Museum's Fantastic Journeys. If you haven't yet watched the story that inspired my workshop, be sure to look for the link to join Michael Katz's telling of the story Garment for the Moon. And watch for 2 other parts to this series featuring a tale from Mali told by the incomparable Baba the storyteller and an amazing shadow puppet story by Moira MacDonald. Both stories are accompanied by hands-on workshops that you can do at home, just like this one with me today. Thank you.